What about you guys? How's it going? I hope you're all keeping well today. Thank God that atrocious weather's all out of the way. I mean, it's hard to believe that a week ago my little estate was about a few inches deep in snow. I mean, how was the weather in your area? I hope it wasn't too bad. But now today is a nice little spring day, but I'm not here to talk about the weather. I'm here to, of course, talk about photographic gear and what have I been playing about with as of late. So big shout out and a massive thanks to my good friend Justin Jamison for letting me borrow a piece of equipment for the past couple of weeks for this review. The equipment I'm talking about is this SAMYANG 85mm f1.4 manual focus lens for the FE mounts. So in a world where the Sony G Master 85mm f1.4 autofocus equivalent exists, how does a lens that is pretty much at a fraction of the price, plus losing out on a few more additional features here and there, hold up against this absolute beast of a lens? Now I know as of late I've been lushing over a lot of the Samyang glass. This doesn't mean that I've been sponsored by them in any way. It's just me making a discovery on a fantastic lens company that has just fallen onto my hands or into my lap and straight onto my camera that I've been playing about with. So similar again, this video is in no way sponsored or promoted by Samyang. This is all straight up honest reviews here. So lens specification, it's exactly what it says on the tin. This is an 85mm fixed focal length or prime lens with the widest aperture going to f1.4. Generally considered one of the best lenses to have if you are a wedding photographer or very into your portraits. It's generally considered a really nice focal length, plus the really wide aperture to get those really bokeh-like effects. But straight out of the box you do get a soft carry case, a plastic lens hood which is about half the size of the lens itself, so it does add a bit more of a bulk. Plus you get front and back lens cap. I mean, the front filter here is a 72mm, so 72mm UV polarizer, ND, whatever filters will go straight onto here. And once it's out of the box, the one thing you will feel is this is an absolute chunk of a lens. It's bulky, it's well made, it's pretty big as well. So considering that on a mirrorless camera where everything is compact, this is fairly going to be very front heavy on the camera. But that being said, this is an extremely well made lens, especially since it only costs around £300 area. So where the build quality is concerned on this lens, this is made of a really high quality, with the barrel really made up to a high standard. I don't think it's weather sealed, but it can take a good fair bit more of a knocking around than what the likes of my 35mm will do. Samyang's glass is always very impressive, especially with this lens being ultra multi-coated, hence the UMC at the end of the model of the lens itself. So that means that the glass here is all coated to help cut down on additional glares and such getting into the lens. Plus you got the added benefit of that the actual ring itself is made out of metal. But what I find really impressive is the metal is a really thick chunk. So that means it's again another high quality standard that's been made here. So even though this is quite a cheap lens where money is concerned, it certainly doesn't feel like a cheap lens at all. So like I said at the start of the video, compared to the Sony G Master, where the G Master has full autofocus, this lens is totally manual focus. So everything is all done through the manual ring here, which is nice and quick, nice and smooth. It's not noisy or anything. It's got some nice padding. So this would be very good if you're into your video work and you do a lot of manual focusing. Especially if you're using the likes of the Sony mirrorless mount cameras where you've got focus peaking, this will help majorly. Especially if you were like me and you were testing this out and testing it out with the f1.4 aperture. This took a lot of patience, but more on that later on. So while we're going back to old school where the focus is concerned, because it's all manual, we're also going old school with where the aperture is concerned. So instead of controlling the aperture through the camera, we're actually controlling it through the lens itself. And it's actually quite a noisy turn, but it's nice and smooth again, similar to the manual focus. What I love about this is it doesn't mess around where the aperture is concerned, because especially with 1.4 and f2, there's no f1.8 or anything like that involved. It just goes straight from 1.4 to f2 with a massive chunk, and then from there on then it goes 2.8, f4, f5.6, so on and so forth up until f22. So with a wide aperture of f1.4 and a mixture of 8 aperture blades in this lens, the bokeh you're going to get on your photographs will be absolutely stunning, and you'll see from some of the examples at the end of the video with what all that I got. And similar again, this is where patience comes into play with this lens, because you've got the mixture of manual focus and an extremely wide aperture. It'll take a lot longer for you to set up your shot to make sure everything is nice and in focus compared to an autofocus lens that can just lock on and stay locked on. So there's a bit more love involved on here, because there was many a times I was nearly ready to chuck my camera into the lagging whenever I had it tested out. But again, we'll see more of those samples later on. So where the aperture performance is concerned, well, let's take a look, shall we? So Pikachu is here to demonstrate all the different apertures from f1.4 off to f2. You can see that the bokeh is looking as smooth as butter. Now going into the f2.8 and f4, I actually find that the f4 and f5.6, mostly f5.6, are actually the sharpest apertures with this lens. Now going into f8, f11, things are still remaining nice and sharp here. But when we start to reach into the f16 and f22 as we are here, starting to lose a little bit of out of focus here with Pikachu, but things are still remaining nice and sharp. Now the one thing I liked about this lens is when I put it through Lightroom afterwards and into lens correction, there was little to no distortion whatsoever. Only a minute bit of vignetting going on, but there was no stretching going on in my images. However, there was one thing I really didn't like, and this is where this lens has a big downfall, especially when you're shooting at f1.4. Have a look. So most of these shots were taken at f1.4, and as you can see in the highlighted areas or the white areas, that there is a strong chromatic aberration going on. Very deep and bold purple and green lines appear, mostly purple. It's the one thing I really don't like about this lens. Even though it is something that's easily fixed in the likes of Photoshop afterwards, it's still very strong. So yeah, the chromatic aberration on this lens is without a doubt its biggest downfall, but you know, you have a really cheap lens here. I mean, like I say, this generally costs about sort of £300. So, you know, there has to be some things involved that will bring its ratings down. So as we flick through some of the sample images I had taken from when I took this around Titanic Quarter, my final thoughts on this lens is I actually think it is very good. I mean, yeah, sure, there's a lot of things involved here that sort of bring it down. I mean, yes, there's a lot more patience involved because it's manual focus. The chromatic aberration was the one thing I really didn't like about this lens, but it's something that is easy manageable now with the use of Photoshop and Lightroom. And especially with the fact that this lens is a fraction of the price of the G Master, but still gives you really clear images, really pin sharp images once it's actually locked on in the focus. Phenomenal bokeh. I mean, the bokeh was so smooth with this lens, I was completely blown away. Now 85mm is generally not a focal length I would go for. I personally prefer more wider lenses. F1.4 is not something I would generally go down to myself, but I know there's a lot of portrait and wedding photographers out there that need this type of lens. So if you're in the market for a cheap, affordable 85mm for your mirrorless camera, then I wouldn't hesitate in getting one of these guys. You know, it can do you for a good few years until maybe you've built up a bit of money and got the G Master. So could this lens be the one for you? Well, let me know in the comments down below and tell me what you think. Or if you actually own this lens, well, again, just leave a comment and share your opinions. And don't forget to like, share, press that wee subscribe button down below or in the link at the end of the video so you can stay up to date with future videos. But until then, guys, take care and have a great day.